Hello and welcome to everybody who's joining the webinar. We're delighted that you're here. We're just going to give it about a minute to have everybody start to log on. And while we're doing that, if you can type in the chat area where you're calling in from today or dialing in from, that would be fantastic. We like to see where everybody is here in the world. So you can put that into the, yeah, there we have some folks from England. Boston, welcome. Netherlands, of course. Again, welcome to everybody who's logging on. It's great that you're here today. And if you where you are in the world, that would be wonderful. We have Sweden, Glasgow, Netherlands, Amsterdam, India, Milan. Hello and welcome. It's wonderful to see everybody. Norway, Spain. It's a really wonderful global group. Great to see you. Again, we're just going to wait a moment as we have everybody log on. Oh, Australia, thank you for logging in. New York, Brussels, Brazil. Wonderful. Again, welcome everybody as you're logging on. We're just taking a moment as people are joining us. Mexico City, Tel Aviv, Minnesota. This is great. Thank you everybody for joining us. All right, wonderful. Well, why don't we get started? I think most everybody is here, which is great. So welcome to MIT Senseable City Lab's webinar on Roboat, Reimagining Amsterdam's Canals. I am Jackie Dufault, the Executive Director here at Senseable City Lab, and I'm delighted that all of you could join us. Today, we're going to discuss research that Senseable City Lab has been doing to help the City of Amsterdam find new ways to use their canals. We are pleased that Ger Baron, the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for the City of Amsterdam, can join us. In addition, we have 3 lab members here with us today. F.Duarte, T.Shan, and D.Meyers, who are working on the Roboat project. For those of you that this might be your first Senseable City Lab webinar and possibly also your first time learning about our lab, let me provide you a little bit of background. Senseable City Lab was started over 10 years ago by Carla Roddy here at MIT. The lab focuses on making cities smarter through the use of technology. Our sponsors range from large global corporations to cities around the world. If you'd like to learn more, I am going to include a link to our website in the chat box. If you have any questions that arise during the webinar, please send us a note in the chat area on the right-hand side of your screen. The team will take your questions at the end of their presentation. Fabio, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. So I'm very pleased to have you all here to learn more about Roboat. Roboat started 4 years ago with the support of the City of Amsterdam, and Ger Baron, who is here with us today, is he's a supporter from the very beginning. This project is a research project and a research and development project between MIT and AMS Institute. So before we share some things that we're doing now, and we'll show for the first time the full scale that's already navigating in Amsterdam, I will ask Ger to say something about Amsterdam and this challenge that we have ahead of us. Thank you, Ger.
Thank you, Fabio. And actually, I would say for us, this is a moment in time. I mean, we've been talking about Roboat for a few years. You've been building on it in many ways, in software side, hardware side, and everything, testing several skills. And now it's a full-scale model. Actually, not a model anymore. It's a full-scale version that actually floats around the canals. And this is actually, I would say, quite important for me, but also for us as a city, because it has provided us so many insights and opportunities. So I will tell a few things about that, but why this is so important for us. And first of all, I don't see this as something for Amsterdam. I see this as something that is replicable all over the world, basically, but we're testing it and developing it in Amsterdam, basically. And I would say the starting point for us was actually thinking about the city, getting more people into it, getting more crowded, getting all these issues most cities in the world have. Because we have more inhabitants, and we're getting more inhabitants because people tend to move to cities. At least they did pre-COVID, but we assume they will start doing that again. But secondly, there are a lot of visitors coming to a city, about 15, 20 million a year nowadays. So it's getting crowded. So we need to rethink basically the infrastructures in the city. And the Roboat project gave us the opportunity basically to start with, well, actually the infrastructure that has, well, determined how Amsterdam developed itself throughout the years. I mean, Amsterdam used to be a swamp up to 6 years ago. So everybody says that you can't make or create a society. Well, you can make cities basically, and every piece you see is created by people, because otherwise we'll be in a swamp basically. So we put holes into the ground for the houses and create canals and waters basically as an infrastructure for cargo, for people in the 17th century. So for us, this is not only about water, actually, this is about how to rethink infrastructures in a city. And we started with the waterworks, like we've been doing for the last 400 years, basically. So fitting to our DNA, starting to think about water and how you can use the water actually is a great starting point. So the Roboat project is interesting because it's not only addressing people in a boat being a tourist, seeing the city like you could have the idea on the picture you see right now, but it's a bit broader basically, because we want to leverage the infrastructure for many things. I mean, this is about looking at the water quality in the canals. Nowadays, you can swim in the canals again. It used to be obviously a sewage. Nowadays, it's so clean you can swim into it, but when you want to do that, you want to make sure the water is clean. Secondly, we have a tremendous issue by collecting waste and, well, old cargo bags, as you can see on the right side on the picture, and robots could have a role in that as well. The same infrastructure could have a role for logistics, for people to go from A to B. The same infrastructure can be used to, well, manage your green or get data out of the city, basically using LiDAR or other technology. So for us, it's about how can we leverage on the infrastructure so we can be more efficient, rethink the whole concept of a boat. I mean, a boat used to be, well, like the boats you see on the left side on the image. Roboat is something that's different. I mean, the thinking about it is how to use it in as many ways as possible, how to create a modular infrastructure that we can apply to the city and be flexible to that as well. So in this thinking, for us, this is the thinking we also need to use for mobility in a broad way, even how to design a city. I mean, everything that goes from A to B is connected, collects data, can be used for many other things, obviously in a privacy-aware way. When we were not putting the CIA in the canals, we're putting robots in the canals. So the idea for us is that this actually is a great example about how to rethink our city, the infrastructures in a city, and find a use that is, well, way broader than we have been using our infrastructures for the last years. So the journey we've been going through together, or actually the journey the Senseable City Lab and AMS people have been going through for the last years, basically actually is quite interesting for us as well, because I think we need to rethink our cities for every infrastructure within the next years in a way we did with Roboat. And then it's great to see that from the great images. I mean, I'm always very jealous about the designers at Senseable City Lab, because I mean, look at this. Looks always like it's already there and it's real, but now actually it is real. So now we can start to learn how this new infrastructure of autonomous boats will help us contribute to solving the issues we have in our city, as I mentioned before. So the whole idea that we actually now not only testing and experimenting, but bringing this to practice and making robots an integrated part of the city management, of the experience people have in our city, making it a part of actually everyday life, probably in a way, by designing something that's friendly for users, by designing that fits into a city, uses the waterworks, etc. A bit more in a design that's a bit different than in the 17th century, maybe. But the idea behind it is not that different, basically. And I'm very happy that we found this collaboration, found this way to start doing this. And I think now actually the doors are open for everybody who have even more ideas and new ideas. Sorry, Fabio, for this. You could send an email to Fabio when you have more ideas about potential applications, basically, because this is nothing more than an application of an infrastructure we're building in the city, and which can be replicated to every other city in the world. I would say at the moment it actually works. So, well, actually, I'm trying to say thank you for helping us in this thinking, this design thinking on how to redesign a 400-year-old infrastructure in a way we could leverage it to actually make the city even a bit more beautiful and solve a few of the challenges we have. And for us, it's a starting point for the rest of the city and how to rethink our infrastructures, the way we work, play, etc. In the city. So thank you for that. And I'm really looking forward into your contributions about how this actually works. and about what we're actually going to do within the next year to make sure we validate the technology, validate the ideas, and make sure we bring this to decent use. So thanks for that already.
Thank you, Ger. And as Ger was saying, we should think Roboat as a floating pixel, basically. Roboat can transport people, can transport goods, but it also can combine with other robots to create stages, floating markets, bridges. So this is the magic of Roboat. But we have several technological challenges that we are facing and solving now. And I think the first one that could show us how difficult it is.
Fabio, good. Are you telling us that it also is a transformer? Are we going to see that's a transformer, is it?
Exactly. perhaps. Because initially, when we see this image, we have a boat being only a boat, we have a car being only a car, and Roboat has this flexibility of being several things when they combine with each other, when they talk with each other and with the city's infrastructure. Then perhaps Roboat will be a transformer. And Xiao will first let us know how boat perceive space and navigate through these canals. Xiao, please.
Thank you, Fabio. Hello, everyone. I'm T.Shan. I'll be talking about 3D mapping with the Roboat. Amsterdam's canals are one of the liveliest urban waterways in the world. Although it's fun, it's also more challenging to operate an autonomous boat in the canals than in open water. We have been working on creating novel perception technologies that help navigate a rowboat safely in Amsterdam's canals. Our perception approach takes input from multiple sensors. Here, a 3D laser scanner gives range measurements. IMU gives inertial measurements. GPS gives position measurements. Supported by the simultaneous localization and mapping technology, our goal is to use a Roboat to build an accurate representation of the canals. The framework of our approach is shown in this graph. I know it looks complicated, and actually is. What you see here is a scheme of how we integrate measurements from different sensors into our perception pipeline. We build our mapping system on top of a factor graph. Sensor measurements are converted to edges in the graph. For example, the measurements from LiDAR and IMU can be used to get IMU pre-integration constraints and LiDAR odometry constraints. The measurements from GPS can be incorporated as the GPS factor. Here are some results. We mount the sensor suite on a boat and drive in the canals of Amsterdam for 3 hours. Mapping the canals is challenging because there are many degraded scenarios posed by bridges and buildings. When the boat is under a long bridge, there is little structural information available for LiDAR odometry. With the proposed framework, we can use the IMU pre-integration factor to get accurate pose estimation in structureless environment for a short period of time. With the GPS factor, we can correct the position of the boat when GPS reception is available. Besides estimating the boat position, we are able to build an accurate 3D map of Amsterdam's canals using Roboat. In the next few months, this technology will be integrated into the full-scale Roboat, which is already testing in Amsterdam. Now let's welcome Drew to continue our discussion on environmental sensing with the Roboat.
Thank you, T.Shan. This is a photo of the annual city swim event in Amsterdam. It's one of the few days in which swimming in the canal is permitted. However, in 2018, this event was canceled due to water quality concerns. It was detected that there were dangerous levels of E. coli. Wouldn't it be nice if Amsterdam canals were swimmable all summer long? We're hoping to use Roboat to monitor the water quality in Amsterdam. This could help track the efficacy of any water management changes in the future. And a little bit on the background of water quality monitoring in Amsterdam. On the left is a map showing the water quality sampling sites in and around Amsterdam. The green squares represent pre-existing stationary sampling locations, and the red routes show the path of a patrol boat, which we've turned into a mobile sensor. This gives us much more coverage of the Amsterdam canals than a stationary site. In addition to the problems with E. coli, Amsterdam also experiences problems with algae blooms, which can be toxic. On the right, you can see an example of the extent of a microcystis bloom in a previous year. Our goal with Roboat is to use the autonomous boat as a mobile sensing platform to detect algae. In order to detect and classify algae, we're developing a sensor which relies on fluorescence spectroscopy. This works by exciting a sample of water with different wavelengths of light and looking at the intensity and wavelength of light which is emitted. On the right is an example of the data which is generated from this technique. This data is called an excitation emission matrix and can act as a unique fingerprint for each group of algae. During the summer of 2019, we collaborated with WaterNet, Amsterdam's water authority, to deploy this type of sensor on one of their patrol boats. This sensor deployment lasted 3 months, and the data was streamed in real time via a cellular connection. This deployment helped us prove out a lot of concepts for an eventual integration with the full-scale rowboat. We're working on making the data we collect publicly available through a web-based dashboard and an open data API, which can be seen here. I'd like to thank our WaterNet collaborators, which have made this possible. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Fabio.
Thank you, Drew. Let me share my screen. Okay, and now all this technology we are putting together into a full-scale rowboat called Lucy, which is now in Amsterdam. So here we have a short video to show this project with you. So this is Lucy. We are testing the full scale in Amsterdam. We are now putting all the autonomous technology in the boat. And you are all welcome to visit us at AMS. And if you have any questions now, I think we are open for questions. Jackie, back to you.
Yep, thank you, everybody. This has been a wonderful presentation. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat area, which is in the right-hand side of your screen there, and then we can ask those to the panelists. Unfortunately, we can't have you actually use your voice to ask the questions. So if you can put them in there, that'd be great. And I know one question that has come in actually has to do with timing. When do you think this will be open to the public?
So we are going to have a public demo in October 2021. And by then, if COVID allows, then we can invite everyone to see the boat in the water, but also hopefully to use the boat near Amsterdam, AMS Institute in Amsterdam.
That'll be fun. Again, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat area there on the right-hand side of your screen. While we're waiting for that, so okay, some of the questions that are coming in now is how many boats do you think will be in circulation once this gets going? How big, I guess, how big do you see this project growing?
So there is one aspect of this project called multi-vessel coordination. And the idea is that by the end of this year, 2021, we're going to have 2 vessels. One of them, this one, Lucy, transporting people. But Lucy is also a tugboat. And the second vessel is actually a dumpster. So the boats, they can latch together, they can find each other, decide how is the best approach to each other, they can latch and do multiple configurations. And the first one is how we can remove waste from the canals. But on the other side of the project, we are working with some multi-vessel coordination algorithms. So we can make 50 boats navigate together, creating different infrastructures. So actually, from algorithmic point of view, we can go as large as 50, 100 boats.
Wonderful. And are other cities asking you about this yet, or is this just in Amsterdam for right now?
Yes, we do have. From the very beginning, we've been approached by many cities, from Tokyo to Paris. But Amsterdam is, as Ger Baron said, Amsterdam is our main focus right now. And then from Amsterdam, we can go MIT and AMS, anywhere where we have urban waterways.
Wonderful. And can you tell us more about the approach that is suggested in the final design and the case definition?
The design of this boat?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. So as we can see here, this does not look like a regular boat. First of all, because as I said before, Roboat is not a boat, is a floating platform. And why? Because it can combine with other boats and create this stage, etc. So as we can see here, it's a rectangular shape, and the side is 4 meters long, and the narrow side is 2 meters long. So with this case, we can put several boats together and create a rectangle or a square. So that's why it has this kind of weird shape for a boat.
Perfect, thanks. And then this question actually is for Ger. What about the regulation for autonomous vessels on the canals of Amsterdam? Does the Roboat already have an official permit to navigate? I guess it's more talking about the legal aspects. How is this going to work moving forward?
And actually, it's a great question. I mean, as long as it's on the canals, it's managed by the city, so we can define our own rules more or less, basically. So that makes it a bit easier in terms of the public water that's managed by the national authorities, or the national waterways. So for an experimental phase, yes, and obviously we're going to use this project also to define the rules we need to take for autonomous boats, basically, and into our canals. So it's also a learning how we're going to manage this on the long run. But for experimental phase, we can do this basically. And secondly, I mean, the thing is different than with autonomous cars, is that I mean, it doesn't go like 80 miles per hour or something, basically. So experimentation is a bit more simple than with cars, basically. So it's also easier to make agreements on how to do this, basically. But in the beginning, obviously, there should be human supervisory people around to make this happen.
Wonderful, thank you. And then a question came in, if this can be used on the ocean. So does one of you want to take that one? I
can start and then perhaps Chow, but there is a big difference on the technology that we need to navigate in the ocean and in an urban environment. For one, if this boat is off by 30 centimeters or 50 centimeters in the ocean, it's imperceptible. But if this happens in Amsterdam, it can collide with another boat, and more importantly, it will never latch with the other boat. So the technology that Roboat uses not only to navigate, but also to find precisely where the other boat is and how to approach the other boat is much more accurate. It's not necessary to have all this accuracy if you are navigating from Europe to America, for instance.
Wonderful. And then one question came in about what kinds of different formations can you see making as far as the bridges go? I'm sure this has to do with, can it just be a flat bridge, can be a raised bridge? So getting a little bit more to what types of bridges do you see?
Yeah, it needs to be a flat bridge because otherwise the boat will need to fly. So it will be almost kind of an airplane. But it needs to be a flat and floating bridge. But it also can be a stage. So imagine if you have a concert in Amsterdam near the central station. So we can have the stage on the Eye River and the public on the shore. Or we can have floating markets. Amsterdam has beautiful street markets. So we can have also these floating marks in Amsterdam in several locations.
Wonderful. And then a question kind of more for the city of Amsterdam, thinking about this going forward in the future. Do you see this potentially taking over, making most of the boats on the canal be, without gas, basically, to be solar powered? Is this kind of the goal for the city going forward?
Yeah, the goal anyhow is to make every boat on the canals EV powered, basically. So so this fits perfectly in that ambition. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then a question that has to do with how the LiDAR will work when it's potentially raining or foggy. If you want to take that one, Fabio, or
I think it's Chow.
or
Yeah, yes. So yes, LiDAR will have a lot of noise in harsh weather, and our plan is to add more ultrasonic sensors to account for that.
Wonderful, thank you. And then another question about, there's going to be a virtual reality workshop. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So actually, we did some virtual reality workshops to test a few things about Roboat. The first one was whether people would be comfortable navigating autonomous vessels in Amsterdam. So one of the experiences that we did was, okay, you enter in a virtual reality environment on a boat, on a rowboat with a captain, a virtual captain. And the same thing happened with the same environment, etc., without the captain. And what we found, and okay, once the boat starts navigating, the first thing that we could see is another boat coming in the opposite direction, almost colliding with you. Rowboat could deviate. So what we saw is that for the first minute or so, people in the boat, on the boat with a captain was less afraid. But after 2 minutes, they get used to this autonomous navigation, and the stress level is basically the same. So we are using virtual reality to understand how people feel and perceive safety, moreover, with Roboat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions we have for now. Oh, we have one more that just came in, asking a little bit more about how the boat is powered.
So the boat is powered by batteries. So we have a few sponsors of the project, and one of them is Murata, and they are providing batteries for the boat. And also the boat has a contactless power. So the boat simply docks, and by docking, the battery is charged, and then the boat navigates. All the boats in Amsterdam must be electric by 2025. So this was another exciting challenge for us.
Wonderful, thank you. And then just a further question about the electric vehicles, electric vehicle boats that will be in the canal. What is the goal for when that will happen by? To have all the boats electric?
2025.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic session. As I mentioned, we have actually recorded this session, so it will be available, and I'll be sending a link out, and it will also be on our website so that you can share this with others who might be interested. And we will be having additional webinars coming up in the new year, and I'll be in touch once we have what that schedule will be. So thank you everybody for joining us today. This has been a truly wonderful conversation, and wonderful to be able to learn more about the research that we're doing with Amsterdam. And I thank all of our presenters and for everybody for joining. Thank you so much, and we'll see you online again soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.